Thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member, for putting this together. It's an incredibly important issue because it affects everyone, consumers, government, retailers, and financial institutions. And I also want to commend Mr. Carney and Mr. Neugebauer for putting forward a bill that would create a national data security standard for all businesses that handle sensitive financial information for consumers. And this bill would significantly strengthen the data security procedures for businesses, but in a way that is flexible and can evolve as cyber threats change and evolve. I am still concerned about the scope of the State preemption in the bill, and I want to keep working on the preemption and enforcement provisions. But I have signed on to this bill as a co-sponsor because I think it is a serious, good faith effort to tackle what is a critically important issue to our economy. And again, I'd like to commend Mr. Neugebauer and Mr. Carney for their hard work and leadership on this issue, and I look forward to working with them, particularly in the enforcement provisions in it. My first question is to Governor Pawlenty. I'd like to ask you about the data security standards that Gramm-Leach-Bliley put in place for the financial institutions. You mentioned they had worked well in the financial institutions, but I also want to know, have they proven to be overly burdensome for smaller banks and credit unions?
And Congresswoman Maloney, no. The standards have been flexible, and I think Congressman Neugebauer and Congressman Carney have done a good job in doing the same thing in their bill, which is to say, look, we're going to have standards, but we're going to allow them to be scaled to the size and complexity of the enterprise in question. I think that's a good model.
So in other words, they've worked well with it and not been too burdensome for smaller financial institutions, and they won't be too burdensome for smaller retailers. And I'd also like to know your feelings about the having a minimum or a floor standard. I know that California, Oregon have a standard that's higher. I think it's important you've got to have a floor. Do you think it should be a floor, or do you think it should be a ceiling, and why?
Congresswoman, again, another great question. And if, right now we have nothing in many sectors. So something is better than nothing.
Absolutely.
And so floor would be progress, but ceiling, if it's set high, I would just encourage you. Minnesota, when I was governor, we passed, what we thought were nation-leading, both data protection standards and notification standards. You wouldn't want a bill that undercuts the 13 or so states that have done this. So if you're going to set it high, set it aspirationally, and I think that would be the best place to be, and it would serve the country best. And think about the way that people place data centers, where they store data, how they store data. The fact that there's going to be wide variance between states doesn't sync with how we know cyber commerce gets done.
But as a governor, you know how valuable the creativity of the state system is to come out with solutions that then are adopted in this area. It seems to evolve every day with new technologies, new ways to threaten consumers and really the security of our information. I'd like to ask Stephen Orphy, given your organization's experience in establishing data security protocols and procedures, what would you say are the most important aspects of a company's data security plan? In other words, what is the most important thing that a company could do to protect their customers, to protect their company against data breaches?
Thank you, Congresswoman, for that question. I think what's most important is the PCI standard is, in our view, the best defense against cyber criminal attacks. It really becomes a question of vigilance and being methodical and disciplined in your approach, and looking at and paying special attention to the fundamentals, doing the blocking and tackling, looking at the physical and logical security. It's day in and day out. It needs to be 24/7. It needs to be built into the DNA of an organization, from the CEO right down to the working level.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned in your testimony, Mr. Oxman, that you thought that sharing information was so important. And can you just expand on that on what we need to do additionally in expanding information in this area?
Thank you, Congresswoman Maloney. The issue is companies are barred from sharing cyber threat information with each other and in some cases even with the government. The House fortunately passed a measure that we support that will eliminate those impediments to that kind of important information sharing. We support that legislation. We hope the Senate will move forward on it. And we need to make sure that companies can, without liability, share information with each other and the government to prevent future threats.
Great. Thank you. My time has expired. Thank you.
Chair now recognizes